Welcome to Fantasy Football Today, everybody. We're presented by BetMGM, the sportsbook born in Vegas, and we've got the waiver wire today for Week 2. Isaiah Likely, how much FAAB should you be laying down on Isaiah Likely? Jordan Mason, 66% rostered. Jamie was just talking off the air, a good point. We play CBS Sports. Default is usually 12 teams. So if Jordan Mason is 66% rostered in CBS leagues, on ESPN and Yahoo, it's probably a lot lower. That's the roster percentage for most of these guys that we're going to be talking about. It's going to be lower on other websites here. So we'll tell you about everyone you need to know about it. We're picking up Brandon Cooks. We're picking up Greg Dortch, Zach Bond in IDP leagues. We will break it down for you. So good morning, guys. I hope week 1 was successful for you. Quite an interesting curveball, Dave Richard, with Christian McCaffrey being inactive. It got me. I screwed a lot of people over. What are your thoughts?
Helped a lot of people too.
It did.
It really did. It's unbelievable. Listen, these things happen, and it feels like once a year we get a surprise inactive at some point during the season. Not a week 1 thing, just overall in the year. And now it's already happened in week 1, and I'm certain it's going to happen again. It's a nightmare. I get where the 49ers are coming from. I seemingly hurt himself in practice this week, and they wanted to hold him out of the game. And they knew they had Jordan Mason, and Mason was pretty good. This would be the counter argument to not getting your own guy's handcuffs. Or maybe I should say, this is the argument to getting your handcuffs, is so that you're protected. And when McCaffrey went down with the injury, I said there were 2 things I was going to do if I drafted McCaffrey at 101. I would either draft an extra running back, which wouldn't have helped me unless that extra running back was on the Jets, but despite that, I would have added another running back, so I'd be deeper at that position, or I would have prioritized Jordan Mason. And if you had done that, you would have been very happy. But hopefully this is a rare case. I know that there's a report that McCaffrey might not play in week 2. Jordan Mason's going to be super popular off waivers. And if McCaffrey is not himself this year, you got a good look at what I saw from Jordan Mason in the preseason. Awesome agility, really good vision. He can see second level before a lot of running backs that I've watched can see the second level. He was really, really good.
28 carries, 147 yards and a touchdown, only 1 catch, but he played just about every snap. I think something like 88% of the snap, maybe 81. He played a lot of snaps, Jordan Mason. He was the guy. And the report from Adam Schefter said there's a real chance that McCaffrey does not play this weekend at Minnesota. So Mason should be a priority, obviously. But Jamie, if you were asked on CBS Sports HQ, and I'll ask it again, if you had known that McCaffrey were going to be out, what would you have done? Where do you think you would have ranked Mason?
He definitely would have been a top 20 guy, potentially top 10. You're just looking at, this is why we talked about Elijah Mitchell. This is why we talked about Jordan Mason after Mitchell's injury. The 49ers running back is fantastic. McCaffrey does that on steroids. So McCaffrey gets this rushing total. Maybe it's a few yards less because he's doing more in the passing game. He's most likely north of 150 total yards. And let's face it, that was still a very good defense. I know the Jets didn't look that great last night, but that's still a really good defense. So you want this player. And, you mentioned 66% rostered. He would have been added across the board. He would have been 100% rostered if we knew on Friday, as Jordan Mason alluded to in the postgame interview, that he was told, or I don't want to speak for him, but as he alluded to, that he could be starting in this game. Now, I think one thing about that, because you got a lot of, comments on what he said, they could have said, Jordan, you're starting, but Christian still could have been playing. So that's probably their loophole way around this of, maybe getting fined, because they could say,
nope, they're getting fined. They're getting fined.
Yeah, let's. So basically, McCaffrey apparently left practice Friday with calf tightness, and then Jordan Mason was asked post game, "When did you find out you were starting?" And he said, "Probably Friday." And if we had known that, that obviously would have helped fantasy managers. So
you would have sat McCaffrey on Sunday. You would have put him maybe in a flex spot. I think that's another thing about these Monday night games. Like, if you have the ability to put somebody in a flex spot, like you could have picked up Juwan Jennings, for example, or you could have picked up Alan Lazard. How fun would that have been if you made that call, and put in somebody who scored 2 touchdowns? So you give yourself a little bit more flexibility. But yes, it was very frustrating. I think just from the standpoint of moving forward, Mason, if he's available, is the number 1 ad. We're not going to say that based on how we operate. You don't know what other waiver wire columns do, what other sites have and roster that. He's just above the threshold for us, but clearly he's the number one priority if he's out there.
He's already rostered in 58% of Yahoo leagues, but if you play on ESPN, good news. He's only rostered in 38% of ESPN leagues.
Yeah, but is he really the number one priority, or is that Isaiah Likely?
I don't think there is a number one priority this
All
week.
right,
Jordan Mason is the number one priority because
no spoilers.
this is week 2. You're
Yeah.
looking at a guy, if he starts week 2, will be in your starting lineup. And what if McCaffrey gets hurt again?
Right, calf injuries are
This
as we know.
there is no question Jordan Mason's number one priority by a billion.
Okay, but you need a tight end. All right.
Right, if you're good at running back
That
and you're bad at tight end or wide receiver, I don't know if you're spilling out all your FAAB to get Jordan Mason.
Yes, you are.
I don't think you are.
Oh, okay. That's another discussion. Spilling out all your FAAB to get a guy who could have 0, maybe one more game where he's worth starting. Definitely.
That's the point.
What would you pay? What would you pay in FAAB for a win next week?
At this point in the season, not as much as I would later in the season. But I to be fair, a quarter of my FAAB for sure.
Yeah, this is not Christian McCaffrey is not definitely out in week 2.
No, but even if he plays in week 2, I would bet that he won't see every snap.
Oh, listen, you're not spending all your FAAB on Jordan Mason.
Yeah, no way.
Nobody should be doing that.
Okay,
right, but let's just say that I had a heartbreaking loss. My team's healthy. I don't have to replace Nakua. I don't have McCaffrey. I'm going to use my top waiver claim on a running back that could be a handcuff by week 3.
Or it could be the starter for 3 more weeks. Like, we don't know.
All right. Well, it depends maybe how much you buy into Likely, because if he's a starting tight end all year, then that definitely changes things. But we don't know. But we'll get to that in a moment. Here's some of the big news we're tracking other than Christian McCaffrey. Puka Nacua is on IR. He's going to miss at least 4 games after re-aggravating his preseason knee injury. We'll talk about Demarcus Robinson and Tyler Johnson and Colby Parkinson and my 3 sons. There you go. Right. A lot of when I started to realize how many people's last name ends in SON. With the whole, anyway, it's a lot of people and all those Rams options.
A lot of sons out there.
Yeah, but the Rams, horrible week for them. Joe Noteboom, who's a starting tackle for now, only was going to be a starting tackle for 1 more week. Alaric Jackson is out for 2 games. He'll be back in week 3. He's going to miss several weeks with a high ankle sprain. And Steve Avila, starting left guard, he's going to miss time. He may have a sprained MCL. Cornerback Colby Durant day-to-day for the Rams. Raheem Mostert and Devon Achane both missed practice. They play on Thursday against Buffalo, so we certainly have our eye on that. This could just be, it wasn't even a real practice, but listed as missing practice on Monday.
But Achane limped off the field at the end of the game, and Mostert missed a lot of time during the game.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, man.
Jalen Wright, here we go.
Or Jeff Wilson. Lamar Jackson missed practice. We don't know what that's all about. Jordan Love, they haven't put him on IR, so that's good news. It is going to be Malik Willis this week, but Jordan, I actually don't think he's officially been ruled out for this week, Jordan Love, but it's good that so far they haven't put him on IR. David Njoku looks like he's going to miss some time with the ankle injury. They're at Jacksonville this week. We'll talk about Jordan Akins later, who had 3 targets after Njoku left. Jake Ferguson, he has not been ruled out for this week. That was really caught a break there, hopefully, with Ferguson. He might miss a game. Hopefully none, but maybe not any more than 1 for Ferguson. Josh Allen's good to go. He's going to play. Ken Walker, all I saw anyway from their new coach, Mike McDonald, is day-to-day for Ken Walker. Roma Dunze, knee injury. Are we expecting him to miss time?
Yes.
Yes.
Week to week.
And Marquise Brown could be back this week. All right, that's the key news and notes. We'll have more for you later. So let's get into the waiver wire, Jamie, and give me your top 3 priorities.
Jordan Mason, Isaiah Likely, and let's go for right now, Zach Charbonnet. If we find out tonight that both Achane and Mostert missed practice, then put the combination of Jalen Wright, Jeff Wilson at the 3 spot.
Okay, Jordan Mason, Isaiah Likely, Zach Charbonnet, or Dolphins running back. Dave, how about you? Who are your top 3 priorities?
It depends on what you need, and it depends on what you could negotiate in a trade. We can talk about that when it comes to Jordan Mason and Isaiah Likely. I've got Likely at the top of the list, but I get the argument for Jordan Mason. I just think that Likely can have a better rest of season effect on fantasy managers' teams. After Likely and Mason, though, I don't have a good third answer because Charbonnet would be a really good one if we knew that Ken Walker was a serious candidate to miss time. I don't know if that's really going to happen. Dolphins running backs make a lot of sense. We'll see what we find out about those guys. And then you've got other guys that just aren't as exciting, like Rashid Shaheed. I thought he looked great for the Saints. You've got a Rams wide receiver. Someone's got to replace Puka. Alexander Madison. Are we really going to pick him up and expect things from Alexander Madison? What if you need a quarterback? Baker would be at the top of the list for me there. I named like 7 names for my top 3. I don't have a consensus top 3.
All right, so Jordan Mason and Isaiah Likely are the consensus top 2 in some order. We pretty much know that if Christian McCaffrey's out, Jordan Mason is going to be worth starting, based on one game, but based on track record, right? Like we can say that. So, and then just keep in mind calf injury, and it's also an Achilles injury for McCaffrey. So this is calf injuries suck.
Every win buys them a week.
Burrow obviously had the calf injury and struggled with it. Russell Wilson came back from the calf injury in the preseason, re-aggravated it. Once upon a time, Jimmy Rollins of the Philadelphia Phillies said, calves are tricky cats.
I mean,
Scott White say that all the time.
If you live in the Bay Area, you certainly know about it with Kevin Durant.
Yes. So just keep that in mind. Now, my question is, what do you guys expect from Isaiah Likely going forward?
Certainly market correction. He's not going to do that again.
Right. And there's going to be games where the Ravens are going to be able to run the ball a ton, and Likely will be a minimal.
And Mark Andrews is going to be better.
Yeah.
So,
but he's one of the rare tight ends that works like a wide receiver. And there will be also games where the Ravens are going to throw the ball, and he will clearly be a focal point.
You definitely want to add him. There's no doubt about it. 100%. And it goes for even if you don't need a tight end. So like we're talking about Jordan Mason, 66% rostered. That's a pretty hefty amount of leagues. Right. There's going to be plenty of fantasy managers. Look, they just lost Jake Ferguson and David Njoku, who are 2 starting tight ends. So there's going to be a want to add Isaiah Likely in a lot of leagues. There's also people that are concerned, understandably so. I don't think they should panic, but understandably so, about Laporta and McBride and Kittle and Kincaid. And they're going to say, okay, do I need to go add an Ingram? Do I need to go pick up somebody as a potential starter? Again, you don't want to go crazy with your FAAB from that standpoint, but it's not a bad idea to pick up these caliber players. You may not need Jordan Mason, but what if he becomes the guy for the 49ers for a month? Like, I want that on my team. What if Likely becomes the best tight end for the Ravens and one of these difference makers at a thin position? You want that on your team. So you're going to probably have to spend a little bit more than you hope to.
What a time to have the number 1 waiver claim, by the way, because if you've got that spot and you don't need either of these guys, you can walk right over to the team that's got Christian McCaffrey or the team that's struggling at tight end and say, hey, I'll go pick up this player for you. What are you going to give me for him? And try and work out a deal in advance if you don't want to carry Mason or Likely. And then obviously, if you've got the number 1 waiver claim and you've got McCaffrey or you've got running back problems, of course you're going to pick up Jordan Mason first. But I think the only ways that you pick up Likely ahead of Mason, and this is just being fair to Jamie, is if you really need a tight end, if you can trade Likely for something really good, or maybe if you really have nothing going on in your team and you don't want to bet against Christian McCaffrey, that would be the reason to take Isaiah Likely. Otherwise, I think Jamie's right. You can take Mason, but it's not so cut and dry that it's Mason by a mile.
I'm going to tell you, like Isaiah Likely and Jordan Mason are going to be rostered in most of my leagues, especially Mason. Maybe not Likely, but Likely is 55% rostered. I'm going to be picking up a lot of DeMarcus Robinson. I can tell you that. I think he's going to be solid.
Is he the right guy to pick up?
I think so. I mean, you look at what Tyler Johnson did. He had a 63-yard catch and run. He spun away from a defender, but he was, look, they both could be worth picking up. But Robinson proved himself a little bit at the end of last year.
Oh man,
I think I think he's the guy to get, and they're both guys to get. And like you could say, all right, maybe I'd rather have Brandon Cooks for 1 week, but if Ferguson's back, actually kind of
Ferguson's not back in 1 week.
Well, he hasn't been ruled out for this week. So, yeah, I think he's on the return to play list or whatever that was for the Cowboys. I'd never.
He's going to be part of the return to play practice group.
Yes, whatever that is.
So that means he's going to be working off to the side, not participating in team drills. That's what that means.
All right. Well, those are some of our top priorities. We have a lot of names to talk about, including Baker Mayfield, who Dave did mention. But is this legit? Because this is now what I think like 7 games dating back to last year where he has been absolutely on fire. Okay. We're going to come right back after this. We're going to talk about FAAB. How much FAAB should you be using? And the top 3 players at each position. We'll recap the Jets and the 49ers. Did Aaron Rodgers look good enough for fantasy managers, even though he only scored 10.7 fantasy points, which probably made him like QB6 this week? But we'll be right back after this on FFT.
Football action continues. Are you ready for this? Ready to take chances? As the gridiron is taken over by the Great White North. It's time to storm the fortress. It's time to fight on the battlefield. Catch the Canadian Football League on CBS Sports Network.
So if you're in a FAAB league, we're going to help you out now with some FAAB advice. What is FAAB? Free agent budget. Typically, you get $100. Sometimes you get $1,000. This is fake money. You don't have to actually spend money. And
there's some that use real money.
I know. I knew you were going to say that. But they do that. But yeah, you bid on players and you have to manage your budget. Whoever bids the highest wins the player. It is the most fair way to do it. If you have a lot of leagues, I don't think you want to do FAAB in every league, but because it takes longer than waivers, but it's the most fair way to do it. You could also consider doing your waivers on Wednesday night instead of Tuesday night to get a little bit more injury information. There's nothing wrong with that. But if you do that, you should definitely make it so that you have like regular free agency after the fact. Otherwise, there's going to be players there's going to be managers who have Thursday night decisions and they won't be able to add anyone. But okay, I digress. How much FAAB are you guys spending on Jordan Mason or Isaiah Likely
I think, as Dave said, it comes down to what you need. You don't want to go too crazy in week 1, but what if you are finding the next, and clearly positions matter here, but what if you're finding the next Puka Nacua or Kyron Williams? So if Isaiah Likely can continue to produce at a high level all season long, or Jordan Mason is the starter for the 49ers for several more weeks, or at the end of the season, if McCaffrey gets hurt again, you would pay all of your FAAB for those type of players. So I would probably say, depending on your needs, depending on your league, I'm looking at around 25 to 30% for each guy.
Yeah, the minimum is 25%. Let's start there. I'm worried that Isaiah Likely is going to go for like 50% of FAAB. I think there's going to be somebody in every league that goes bonkers for Likely. And, we got a lot of time left in this season. I don't know if I want to spend all my FAAB just yet on either of these guys, unless I'm already feeling the crunch of a roster that just doesn't look good after 1 week. And in that case, then maybe I would dial it up close to 50%.
Okay. So
then also ask yourself in that scenario, why does it look bad after 1 week? Is it,
yes, that's
drafted bad players? Is it bad situations? Again, we talked about on Sunday night, is Drake London, Chris Olave, Marvin Harrison Jr., Dalton Kincaid, all these guys that you drafted in the first 4 or 5 rounds, are they terrible? Or did they just have bad week 1 situations?
Overall, there was so many bad performances. Week 1 was super terrible. The passing yards, we gave the stat yesterday going into Monday Night Football. This is from Rich Rebar. The passing yards per game were the lowest of this century since 2000 for week 1. So it was just, there were just a lot of really ugly performances, and we're hoping for some bounce backs. We'll talk more about who, on Wednesday's show, who we're actually worried about and who's going to bounce back. All right, so 25 to 30% of your budget for Mason or Likely. Is there anyone else who warrants more than 10%?
Not really. If you are desperate for a quarterback, you just lost Jordan Love, and for whatever reason, Mayfield wasn't drafted in your league, and most people took 2 quarterbacks, then yes, he's probably worth 15 to 20%.
As we go through the other players at each position on this show, you'll see that there's like relative depth to the top guy at each position Baker at quarterback, likely at tight end. One of the Rams guys are Shaheed at wide receiver. The only position where I don't think there's any relative comparison to Jordan to running is that running back with Jordan Mason. Like, I can't sit here and tell you that Alexander Mattison is the discount version of Jordan Mason. I mean, maybe he is, but technically maybe he is, but he's not going to be as good.
I will say this, that if we find out Tuesday night that the Dolphins running backs both have missed practice, then you're probably going to see people spend, and I get it, on Jalen Wright and Jeff Wilson. Wright would be the priority over Wilson for me, just because I think there's more upside there. But
And
if we find out that, Achan's dealing with a high ankle sprain, you're going to see a lot of people spend significant amount of FAAB on the Dolphins guys.
Don't even speak that into existence, Jamie. Don't do it.
Okay. And then, you've got these wide receivers that maybe aren't all that different. So this is where you can kind of get in trouble with FAAB. You start throwing like $8 out on Brandon Cooks. He might be off your roster in 3 weeks. I think it's possible. I don't want to rule out that Brandon Cooks has a bounce back season and is the number 2 receiver for the
Ferguson misses time. He's very popular.
Yes.
Yeah, I know. But right. Like Tyler Johnson, I'm not sure I'm putting more than like $3 on him out of 100.
Correct.
Right. You don't want to, I see bids early in the season that are just way too high. Just be patient unless you think it's a real difference maker. Be patient. And if you're in the FFT Open, there are 133 of you that are in the FFT Open. You only have to use your FAAB through week 15. So, or something like that. So, 15. So just remember.
Even less in the fishbowl.
Yeah.
Week, I mean,
if you're in one of those tournaments where only one person from your like division advances, you don't have to use FAAB after that. You just get whoever you want. Okay.
So proud of you for saying tournaments the right
So
way.
I know I've been working hard on it. You know what? I've been working hard on BetMGM. If you haven't signed up for BetMGM yet, use our bonus code FANTASY, and you're going to get up to a $1,500 first bet offer on your first wager with BetMGM. So here's what you do. Download the BetMGM app. Sign up using the bonus code FANTASY. Deposit at least $10. Place your first wager on any game. You'll receive up to $1,500 in bonus bets if your bet loses. Just make sure you use the bonus code FANTASY when you sign up. All right, here's how we do the waiver wire. We're going to give you 3 players at each position now, and then later in the show, probably about a half hour from now, we're going to go through it all again, but in a little bit more depth, talk about deeper leagues. We'll also talk about shallow leagues and deep leagues. For those of you who are listening to this going, well, none of these guys are available in my league, or all of these guys are available in my league. But all right, top 3 at each position. Dave, I'll give you quarterback.
Don't you use a specific voice for the person that says none of these guys are available?
None of these guys are available in my league.
Yeah, that's what I was looking for. Yeah. All right, quarterbacks. Baker Mayfield would be my number 1. And I'm looking at quarterbacks not really for like rest of season. I'm going week to week if I lost Jordan Love or if I started Kirk Cousins or Aaron Rodgers or whatever. Baker, top of the list. I've got Stafford behind him and Geno after that. Those are my top 3 at QB.
All right, Stafford is 74.
Stafford's wait. Let me throw Stafford out of there because he's only available in about a quarter of leagues. Mayfield, Geno, and then let's put Justin Fields next.
Yeah, Justin Fields, 17 of 23, 156 yards, plus 57 rushing yards. Again, we don't know how long he's going to be quarterback, but he's usually pretty good when he plays quarterback. He's at Denver this week. All right, so Baker Mayfield, Geno Smith, and Russell Wilson for Dave. Jamie, the running backs, Jordan Mason, and
if Mason's available, he would be number 1. Charbonnet would be 2, and then Jalen Wright would be 3. If Mason is off the table because he's rostered in too many leagues, Charbonnet would be 1, Jalen Wright would be 2, Tank Bigsby would be 3.
Not Jeff Wilson?
I mean, the thing about Wilson is I think he's one of those guys that after waivers goes through once, you can put him at the second time through.
Could you give a top 3 if we find out that Achan and Mostert practice on Tuesday?
Then it would be Charbonnet 1, Tank Bigsby 2, Bucky Irving 3.
So we're just going to like stash mode then.
Well, I think these
Not
guys
really
are going to
anybody
play.
that you like. Okay.
If you need somebody for this week and you're concerned about I mean, Bigsby outplayed ETN, so I don't know if you want to consider him a stash guy, but like I don't want to chase Madison scoring a touchdown. Like to me, that's not
right
something that's relevant. Like I prefer Justice Hill over Madison because I think Justice Hill is going to have his role locked in, and that role in the passing game for that position to me is better in PPR than Madison.
So I think Madison might have the same role. just on a different team, and a team that might be chasing points a lot more often than the Ravens. And I agree with you. Half of his yards came on a total accident play against the Chargers. But I'm thinking of the fantasy manager that's not going to be able to get Mason, that's desperate for someone who's going to be a running back in week 2, that might be able to get you 10 points. And the Ravens are playing the Raiders. So I just don't know how much work is going to be there for Justice Hill.
I also don't rule out the fact that if the Ravens in your scenario have a big lead, that we don't see Justice Hill getting more carries than Derrick Henry at the end of the game.
I mean, I wonder if they just go to the third stringer and they just keep Justice Hill locked in as the passing downs guy, no matter what. Listen, it's ugly once you get past Mason at running back and all the other guys. I reluctantly put Madison ahead of Hill if you need a running back for week 2.
Yeah, listen, I think the Ravens are fascinating because last week in week 1, they had a 56.8% pass rate, which was about middle of the pack in the NFL. So that's the percentage of plays that they passed. They had a higher pass rate than that in only 3 games in 2023. Usually the Ravens are toward the bottom. So if they're going to throw more, it makes things more interesting for everyone, except for Derrick Henry. But for Jackson, for Flowers, for Andrews, for Likely, and for Justice Hill. Hill's last 2 games, going back to 2023, have been against the Chiefs. In both of those games, he had 7 to 8 targets and 4 to 6 catches. But now it's 5 or more targets in 3 straight regular season games and 4 of his last 5 games overall dating back to 2023. One of those games was week 18 with the backups. But I'm just wondering if we're seeing an evolution here of the Ravens offense.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, if they're going to be like middle of the pack in pass attempts, that is a huge development for basically everyone. It's good for everyone but Henry, I would say.
And look, their offensive line looked awful against Kansas City. And you have to replace 3 starters. So if they can't get their run game going again,
Right.
and by their run game, I mean their running backs, because obviously Lamar Jackson was great running for over 100 yards. But if they can't get their running backs going, mostly Henry going, we're going to see a lot more of this.
All right, let's go to wide receivers. Dave, who are the top 3 wide receivers?
I've got Shaheed at the top of my list. I think that he's earned it. He was so fast out there. We saw a lot of receivers show off their speed to put up big numbers in week 1. Shaheed was one of them. I think it sticks, especially the version of the Saints offense that we saw. I know it was against Carolina, but the things that they were doing, using more motion, using more play action, I think it'll pay off. So he's going to be my favorite. And then one of the 2 Rams wide receivers would be next up for me, and they're both available in over 90% of leagues. I put Tyler Johnson ahead of Demarcus Robinson because I think Tyler's going to play in that Nakua role. Short area, in-breaking route type of wide receiver, is going to get decent volume from week to week. I think Robinson is going to be a perimeter receiver. And Robinson, listen, the thing about Robinson is he will have that job even when Nakua comes back. When Nakua comes back, Tyler Johnson, unless he catches on fire, or if Cooper Kupp gets hurt, Johnson will go back to the bench. So it's more of a short-term thing with Johnson over Robinson. But first I liked Robinson, and then I looked at it a little bit more, heard what Jordan Rodriguez had to say. Tyler Johnson is the one I would take next.
Okay, so Rashid Shaheed and the Rams wide receivers. Jamie, who are the top? Oh, by the way, do you think Rashid Shaheed is worth $10 in FAAB out of $100?
No, you don't have
He's not even my favorite receiver, so no.
Okay. I liked one thing about Rashid Shaheed. His average route depth was like 6 yards. He wasn't just his ADOT was super high,
right? Because he had a couple of deep throws.
He wasn't just used the way he's been in the past, where at least in terms of his routes.
Yeah, just keep in mind that Olave didn't do much in that game, and then once that game was out of control, so Shaheed will do more as well. But
yeah, I mean they're going to throw probably twice as many times this week against the Cowboys.
You would think.
Or yeah, I don't know about that, but they're going to throw a lot more. Tight ends, Jamie. Who are the top tight ends?
Likely.
Well, Dave, you said something earlier like
Likely in the 2 Saints guys.
That's my top 3 as well. Who do you have higher, Hill or Johnson?
Hill.
Same.
Hill had 5 carries, and he's so good. I mean, go watch his carries. Like, he doesn't go down. He's really good. 4 of them were in the first quarter. So you have to wonder how he'd be used in a competitive game.
We'll find out this week.
And Foster Morrow played a lot, and he's in the concussion protocol right now. So that could boost Juwan Johnson for sure. Isaiah Likely. Dave, you said something earlier about how I feel like you said there's not a huge difference between.
I mean, listen, there's potentially a very huge difference between Likely and the Saints tight ends. But if you missed out on Likely and you can still get Hill or Juwan Johnson, or you hold your nose and you get Colby Parkinson or Zach Ertz, at least there's somebody there who you can start with a semblance of confidence. But Likely is obviously 4 steps ahead of anybody else on this list.
All right, Jamie, let's get some DSTs.
It's a good week for it. You got the Chargers getting the Panthers. That's a hopeful layup based on what the Panthers looked like last week. The Colts taking on Malik Willis. That's a pretty good situation, even though the Colts defense isn't great. You got the Seahawks in still, I think, a good matchup against the Patriots, and the Seahawks defense looked good against the Broncos, and the Titans against Aaron Rodgers and the Jets, and the Titans defense looked really good against the Bears. And all of them are rostered in 43% of leagues or less.
All right. And kickers?
Unfortunately, can't get Jake Moody. He's rostered in too many leagues, but Cameron Dicker, 61% rostered. Chris Boswell, 11% rostered. Blake Group, 48% rostered. And Jake Bates, 34% rostered.
Just be a big fan of his. You're a groupie. Blake Groupie. Huge game for him. Huge game for Jake Moody as well.
And
the Moody Groupies sounds like a band. IDP, man, Zach Bond. I don't know. Like Devin White did not play for the Eagles, but Zach Bond was everywhere. 11 tackles, 2 sacks. I'm putting in a claim right now. Julian Blackmon for the Colts had 10 tackles. Tackles is really the stat I try to chase, I guess. But Zach Bond is the guy that I would recommend. I don't really have any other.
I'll do a better job of including some IDPs moving forward.
Yeah, this is really Jamie's fault. I would agree with that. All right,
it's my fault. I'm not the one doing IDPs anymore.
Listen, before we go to break, we have to help out a listener. He says he's going to donate to St. Jude if we answer his Fantasy Cops question. This is from Mark. My Dynasty League has a separate guillotine league filled out with a few other buddies. I am to be chopped this week by 2.5 points after the late Christian McCaffrey scratch. Ooh. The thing is, one of the buddies hasn't paid his dues yet, $25. Who should be chopped? Him, me, or a bye week with 2 people cut next week?
You lost.
Yeah, it's you, buddy. I'm sorry. But thank you for the donation. He's going to donate $50 to St. Jude. The other guy, pay your dues. All right, we got to take one more break here. When we come back, shallow league targets. And none of these guys are available in my league. We'll tell you who those people, those Eric Cartman-esque people, should pick up. We'll be right back.
Well, you need your sports news anywhere?
We've got breaking news to bring you.
Then get your sports anytime you want them. Big trade news overnight to discuss.
Because we know you need sports all the time.
A lot of movement in the rankings this week.
A legend adds to their legacy.
We're bringing you that breaking news right here on HQ.
CBS Sports HQ, anywhere, anytime, all the time.
All right, Jamie, I'll give you the shallow league guys. So these are players that are rostered in more than 65% of CBS Sports leagues. Who are the best names to know?
Stafford at quarterback. Running back, the easy one is Jordan Mason, but also Jaleel McLaughlin and Ty Chandler. I think Chandler's going to have still a big part in the Vikings offense this season, and McLaughlin outplayed Javonte Williams, which is a little scary after 1 week. For the receivers, Brian Thomas Jr., Khalil Shakir, Jamison Williams, clearly, Marquise Brown, Josh Palmer, Jerry Jeudy. That's not in the order. If I had to put them in order, I would go Jamison 1, Thomas 2, Shakir 3, Palmer 4, Marquise Brown 5, and Jeudy 6. And then the tight ends, there's not a huge list of guys, but Dallas Goedert, look, he's still going to be involved, 87% rostered. There's not a lot of great names at that position right now.
Oh, I forgot to check the snap count for Pat Freiermuth. But I thought he was look, can he be second on his team in targets? Well, I'm pretty sure he was. And in week 1. So they just barely threw the ball. But if you think their passing game is going to get better, Pat Freiermuth played 7.
I don't think ideally they want to throw the ball more no matter who the quarterback is.
73% of routes.
That's
He
great.
lined up in the slot a little more than a quarter of the time, 4 targets. That was good for 18% target share.
That's good. I mean, 18% you want to be a little bit higher than that, but 74% of the snaps for a guy. Remember in the preseason, we were worried because he was rotating out, even with the first team. That's pretty damn good. So there's a pretty low standard for a streaming tight end. And I still personally think Freiermuth qualifies, especially if Russell Wilson comes back.
Sure.
All right. Josh Paul, two things, Jamie, on your shallow players list. Very shallow players. Matthew Stafford, even without Puka Nacua, you still think he's worth having?
I mean, look, you just lost Jordan Love, and we saw 3 quarterbacks that were drafted in a similar range of Rodgers, Cousins, and Watson all poop themselves. So does Stafford still, with these offensive line concerns and Puka, have more upside? In my opinion, yes. So they're going to throw the ball a lot. And I think while Puka is a huge loss, clearly, DeMarcus Robinson, Tyler Johnson, Colby Parkinson, I think they'll make up a little bit of the difference. But mostly it's going to be volume. So he's not as attractive as he was going into week 1 because of the injuries that they sustained. But it's still Sean McVay, Stafford, and Cooper Kupp. And I'll take my chances with that, especially in week 2 against Arizona.
Right. Yeah. So the matchup in week 2 is awesome. But after that, it's the Niners. Then they're at Chicago, Packers in week 5, then a bye. And then finally the matchups get easier again in week 7 against Las Vegas. So do not overcommit to Matthew Stafford if you can help it. Or commit to him now and find another quarterback within the next 14 days.
It's also good that I don't know how long Puka's going to be out, but it's nice that he'll miss 4 games at least, and then there's a bye. So it could be 6 weeks.
That's when he's coming back.
Yeah, that's fun. Not to have him for 5 weeks. Sure.
Yeah, that's why I took him.
It's better if he's going to miss 5 weeks. I'd rather one of those weeks be a bye than a game. Mm-hmm. That's all I'm saying. Is like his bye week is kind of perfectly placed for him to miss the minimum amount of time, if he is ready to come back at that point. So deep, Dave. I won't do the voice anymore, but none of these.
Dude, I like the voice.
Come on, Dave. None of these guys are available in my league.
I feel like you're like a 70-year-old farmer with a corncob pipe and a big wart on your chin.
Back in my day, we drafted Josh Palmer. Yeah. No. Anyway, who's available?
I sell soy. Fields is 77% available. He's up there. Sam Darnold, 81% available. Those guys might be behind Derek Carr if we're thinking about taking a chance in week 2, though. Going up against Dallas, really tough matchup for Carr. But if he's going to keep playing like he did in week 1, you're going to be happy to have him on your team. Those are the deep quarterbacks to go after. Running backs, these are gross names, but it's Alexander Madison. It's Justice Hill. They're available in over 80% of leagues. Tank Bigsby is available in 77% of leagues. Jeff Wilson will vault to the top of this list if it's bad news out of Miami. With their running backs, he's available in 99% of leagues. Wide receivers, you've got the Rams guys. They're available in 92% plus. Alan Lazard, short-term deal, 97% available. PPR steal with Greg Dortch, 94% available. Same thing with Wandale, 85% available. If you're kind of interested in, actually, I'll save these other names at wide receiver. There are a lot of interesting wide receivers that are stashable, and a lot of them are available in 90% plus leagues, but I'll save that for later on. And then the tight ends, Juwan Johnson, Colby Parkinson, Zach Ertz. Those are the guys that are available.
Yeah, there was only one team I feel like that was super terrible against tight ends, unless I'm forgetting one, and that would have been the Kansas City Chiefs. How are we feeling about Mike Gesicki this week, who had a touchdown called back? He almost caught a touchdown. Wasn't really like the only tight end, unfortunately, but he's 14% rostered. Any interest in him at the Chiefs?
I think for some of these guys that we're going to talk about and some of the ones that we're going to bring up in the case of Gesicki, like you can play this out toward the end of the week. And if Higgins does not return, then you pick him up. If Higgins is back, I have no interest in
Yeah, right. And they were using multiple tight ends anyway. I'm looking it up now just to see. Drew Sample played more snaps than Mike Gesicki. Tanner Hudson had one fewer target than Mike Gesicki. He also had a fumble that cost the Bengals dearly. I'm not as interested in Gesicki.
All right, let's do some more news and notes. This is a weird, honestly, I was thinking all night about this news item because it's an awkward one for me to say. Because on one hand, you got to feel so bad for Deshaun Watson, who lost his father and his friend last week and was playing with a heavy heart and played poorly. And he said it was on his mind. On the other hand, he has now been accused again for sexual assault and battery from an incident back in 2020. So I'm just going to leave it at that. That's the news item. Cleveland signed Kadarius Toney to the practice squad. We're not telling you to pick him up. Atlanta head coach Raheem Morris says Kirk Cousins is healthy. This was talked about a lot on yesterday's Beyond the Box Score. He played one snap from under center. That's unusual for him. Makes you wonder about that Achilles. And obviously Kirk Cousins was awful, but Raheem Morris says he's healthy. Don't know what he's supposed to say. Speaking of deep leagues, by the way, super flex leagues, I don't know if Michael Penix is the worst player to add right now. Okay, Garrett Bowles, left tackle for the Broncos. He left with an injury. Derek Brown for the Panthers, defensive lineman, could be out for the season. They are horrible. And Arizona right tackle Jonah Williams has a knee injury. Jordan Addison has an ankle injury. He's probably going to miss some time. Buffalo running back.
Oh, they think that he escaped without a serious injury, Addison.
All right, I thought he was okay. We'll call him questionable then for this week against San Francisco.
Right. I don't know if he's going to play this week, but you made it sound like he's going to be out a while. I didn't get that sense.
Okay, fair enough. Ty Johnson for the Bills. He was their third down back, so we'll keep an eye on him. He has a knee injury. Teron Johnson for the Bills. He's not going to play this week and perhaps beyond. He's their best defensive back. Their defensive backfield is a mess.
He's their slot corner.
We'll keep an eye on Cleveland's offensive tackles. I mentioned Foster Morrow, Saints tight end. He left with a head injury, and he played quite a bit. Michael Carter for the Jets. He left in the fourth quarter. Very talented cornerback for them, slot corner. Marshawn Lattimore has a hamstring injury. Houston cornerback Jeff Okudah left with an injury. Darius Slayton's in the concussion protocol. Saints got beat up on the offensive line with George Fant, a starting tackle who's replacing a starting tackle. He's like a second string tackle. This is the biggest one. I think the Bucs secondary is a total mess. Antoine Winfield, their safety's out 2 to 4 weeks, and they lost 3 other defensive backs during the game. So let's do a repeat Jared Goff start of the week. This time he's going to torch seriously, he could just go nuts in this game. And Tennessee head coach Brian Callahan wants the backfield split to be a little bit more even for the Titans. So don't freak out about Tajay Spears yet. They get the Jets this week. And then I mentioned this yesterday, but it's worth mentioning probably every day for the rest of eternity. Daniel Jones has thrown more pick sixes than touchdown passes since signing his contract. So that's bad. San Francisco 32, Jets 19. Major time of possession discrepancy here. The Jets, they may have run the fewest plays. They're close to the fewest plays. I think they ran like 48 plays or something. But the Niners had the ball for 38 minutes and 40 seconds. Okay. Any nervousness about Garrett Wilson? He had 6 for 60 on 11 targets. The jersey's too big. He's got 2 sizes too big on the jersey.
How does he not drag his toe on the sideline route at the end of the game?
Because his jersey's too big. It's weighed him down. It's stupid baggy jersey. But yeah, any concerns, Jamie, about Garrett Wilson?
Not yet, no. 11 targets. He's going to be fine.
Did you think Aaron Rodgers looked good? Assess it.
No, I think there's a little bit of shake the rust off for him and Cousins, at least I hope. They didn't play in the preseason. They're coming off 2 significant injuries. You want to see them take a step forward in week 2. For Cousins, I feel a little bit more comfortable with his matchup. For Rodgers, I think this Titans defense is going to be a problem all season long for a lot of teams. So I'm not as confident in him, which is why I have those 2 guys in particular as drop candidates. So Rodgers has got a lot to prove, but that offensive line did not perform did not look as improved as I was expecting. But part of that is they went into San Francisco. That's not an easy place to play.
Right.
I thought Rodgers looked okay. I mean, I thought he looked better than that last year with Green Bay where he kind of stunk. He had some Aaron Rodgers moments, especially the Lazard touchdown. Yes,
he had some great throws in the game, which at least we can say that about him. I don't know if we can say that much about Cousins.
The Lazard's touchdown was also on an offsides broken play too.
Yeah,
right. That's vintage Rodgers. That's what he does. He had that one sideline throw to Garrett Wilson where he dropped it right in the bucket. Wilson got his feet in on that catch.
And Garrett Wilson had 11 targets on 21 pass attempts. If anyone's selling Garrett Wilson, I'm looking and I'm a liking. Yeah, I'm all over that. Because if you need a Puka replacement, you might want to buy low. There are some great opportunities right now. These week 1 wide receivers who struggled. We know how people overreact. So it's an option. Hopefully people will get a little nervous about Garrett Wilson. What do you think about Brandon Ayuk? I think he played 60% of the snaps. He dropped a touchdown. Peyton Manning was very unhappy with him. So he had a bad game, but he was not started in that many leagues. Deebo Samuel. Jamie, you talked about this. If Christian McCaffrey misses time, Deebo could have a bigger role in the running game. He had 8 carries for 23 yards and a touchdown. I don't know. Just your overall thoughts, guys. Jamie, you can start on the passing game for the 49ers.
I expected them to struggle. You know, the Jets defense didn't look great, but still, this is now 18 games going back to last season where they've allowed only 5 touchdowns to wide receivers. So Ayuk, similar situation to the quarterback, shake off the rust, no preseason action. Hopefully he'll be better moving forward. I have no worries about him. Debo was always my favorite 49ers receiver for this reason, as you alluded to, Adam. So that's something that's just an added bonus to his game. I did think it was funny, though, that Jordan Mason had a touchdown that was called back because of a questionable holding call by Debo on Sauce Gardner. And then he gets the rushing touchdown afterwards. I'm assuming Mason was tired because he wasn't even the running back there, at least on the first play. So Debo gets the benefit of that. But look, he's going to get those additional touches when McCaffrey's not there, and that just gives him a huge boost. Kittle will be better. All these guys, again, don't panic.
Kittle will be better. Kittle had 40 yards. That's an amazing day for a tight end.
Superstar.
What a nightmare week for tight ends. I thought Purdy looked good. I don't know what you guys thought about that. Took a few more deep shots than maybe we're used to seeing.
Yeah, if IU catches that ball, it's a pretty solid game for him. It's like 17
Sure.
points. Not
This is always the fear with Purdy, though. If he's not getting multiple touchdowns,
Of course.
he's not going to be great.
It's just like that. And he didn't have even 30 pass attempts in the game. But once Ayuk is back up to speed, we'll see some good games from Purdy.
Yeah, I think he's really good at manipulating the pocket. I watch a lot of quarterbacks. Pressure comes and they have no idea what to do. And this guy's really good. He's obviously not that fast, but he's just good at like finding an extra half a second to make a throw. Purdy's at Minnesota in week 2.
He's one of these guys, like if you lost Love and he's on someone's bench, you could probably try and trade for cheap.
He was started in 31% of leagues. I have a typo here on Ayuk. I had him started as 6%, but I think it was 60%. Let's see what he was.
That makes sense.
67% started. Brandon Ayuk. All right, let's go to the drop-o-meter. 0 to 10 on the drop-o-meter. 0 is no way. Why would you drop him? You're the worst. And 10 is, of course I'm dropping him. He's the worst. Chuba Hubbard, 0 to 10.
9.
Oh, I was going to say 5.
Wow. Okay. They get the Chargers this week. Chase Brown.
0.
1.
Pat Freiermuth.
2.
With the way tight ends are right now, 2.
Dalton Schultz.
10.
Yeah.
Tyrone Tracy, 42% rostered.
6.
7.
DeAndre Hopkins, 92% rostered.
3.
7.
Wow. 7, Dave, on DeAndre Hopkins?
Levis looked like a mess. We can say it was the Bears, but he made some bonehead decisions. We know that he's playing with a knee injury right now, and he's not the number 1 receiver for the Titans. 7.
Caleb Williams, 97% rostered.
2.
Yeah. Although the appeal is lessened a little bit if Odunze is going to miss some time.
Yeah. Khalil Herbert, 47% rostered.
7, 8.
Lay them straight.
Justin Herbert.
I'd put him in
I'm
the
not
same
there
boat as
yet.
Caleb Williams. These are quarterbacks that you don't want to drop, but you're going to need bench space potentially. And if that's the case, then you are going to drop them.
Fair point.
Josh Palmer.
I'll put him in the same boat as those quarterbacks. I don't want to drop Josh Palmer, but
Yeah, don't drop Josh Palmer yet.
I mean, he couldn't have had a worse possible week 1.
Horrible.
Dropped the touchdown, got kicked out of the game for fighting, and it was one of the easiest matchups he'll have all year. Hopefully he rebounds in week 2.
At Carolina, it's also pretty easy, but could be a lot of running in that game.
Could be.
Rico Dowdle.
0.
No. Yeah. Like 1.
Yeah. Just so you know, when I put a player on the drop-o-meter, just for everyone's benefit, it doesn't mean I think they should be dropped. It's just, I think people might ask, should I drop?
Yeah.
And
everybody came out of the woodwork. Should I drop Josh Palmer? Should I drop Josh Palmer? Because I was talking him up, and I'm not ready to drop him yet.
Gus Edwards.
No.
0.
1.
All right, back to the waiver wire here. Just a quick refresh. Matthew Stafford is the shallow league quarterback you can pick up. He's at Arizona this week, 74% rostered. Baker Mayfield. So how legit do you think this is? As I mentioned on Sunday, in his last 7 games of 2023, including the playoffs, Baker Mayfield averaged 25 fantasy points per game, scores 37.7 in week 1. These are 6-point per passing touchdown leagues. A lot of easy matchups, including Washington in week 1, but also Detroit this upcoming week, which he did great against them in the playoffs. So how legit do you guys think Baker Mayfield is?
I think for right now, he's a top 12 quarterback. And could this be sustainable moving forward? Absolutely. You gave the time frame of it. It's a team that has great weapons. As long as Mike Evans stays healthy, he was a little bit dinged up in the game for what seemed like a minute, but Godwin looks like he's back to form. Jalen McMillan looks like he's going to be a playmaker, and I think we're going to see Baker continue to thrive. The thought was, does Canales leaving change some things? Well, they didn't miss a beat at all in this game in week 1. Granted, it was Washington, so take that into account. He's not going to go for 37 weekly, but the stretch that you gave Adam, it's 7 of 8 games with 20 or more fantasy points. And if that's the floor, I'll sign up for that all day. So the one bad game he had was in week 18. It's just he's taken hold of this situation, and we know when he's been healthy, he had that stretch in Cleveland when he was banged up. He's back to being a borderline starter. So for week 2 against Detroit, yeah, he's a top 12 quarterback this week, especially for the Jordan Love manager that's scrambling.
Also, the offensive line is better. The interior of it is better for now. And if the defense is all banged up, if that secondary is going to be rough and they're not going to have Winfield for a couple of weeks, that's a big time loss for them at safety. I think 3 cornerbacks on their team are now in trouble of missing the game. There's going to be nothing but shootouts in Tampa's future, and Baker's playing great.
You think that this week? Sorry, who do they have this week again?
Detroit.
Just potential. I'm just throwing that out there. A little potential.
It's count on it happening on Friday.
No, it's a bonanza. So I don't know if it's a game of the week. All right, so Baker Mayfield's worth getting. Justin Fields. If I told you he was going to be the Steelers starter all season, and by the way, I hate when I do this. I think we all do it sometimes. I read this somewhere. I can't remember where I read it, but someone said, one of the Steelers reporters, this was a sort of a dumbed down sounds bad. A simplified game plan for Justin Fields.
Oh, so dumbed down.
No, not to say that he's dumb. I'm just saying that
you're calling the Steelers organization dumb.
They didn't run the offense that Russell Wilson would have run with Justin Fields. But if he were going to keep the job, that would he be like a 30% FAAB kind of guy, an absolute must add?
He'd be in that conversation for sure.
All right, so you could take that gamble.
Yeah, he's the easy number 2 quarterback to go get, because if he starts this week, remember he lit up Denver last year. It's not going to be the same situation, but 57 rushing yards, like, please do that all day long. Please.
Right. The idea is you're streaming the position. You're not trying to lock up somebody for the rest of the way. And right now, we can't say that Justin Fields is going to be that guy the rest of the way.
All right, Geno Smith gets New England this week. They were pretty good against, Burrow, but it wasn't exactly the Bengals passing attack. Derek Carr at Dallas. I think we're going to be a little hesitant, but let's see where this goes. It's a different offense and maybe much better results. Sam Darnold gets San Francisco and Houston the next 2 games. That's not great.
Yeah, it's tough.
Michael Penix in Superflex. Anyone think that's a possibility, or is that just an overreaction?
I'd be surprised in most competitive Superflex leagues if he's not rostered already, but the percentages don't necessarily bear that out. But we know how Superflex leagues go. So yes, if he's available and you can roster him, absolutely pick him up.
All right, running backs. So these are shallow league guys. Jaleel McLaughlin.
But I think if we're going to go that route, which I should probably include him, is Malik Willis in Superflex leagues. Got to be added.
I'd rather start a receiver or a running back.
I don't blame you, but it's still like if he goes out and let's say has a Justin Fields like performance and finds 1 touchdown with no turnovers, like those 17, 18 points, you'll take those.
Yeah, look, I was asked about it on HQ last night, and my initial reaction was like, bleh. Oh. But this is a much better situation for a quarterback going from those Tennessee teams to this Green Bay team.
I just don't understand how they don't sign Tannehill.
Maybe they see something in Willis that the rest of the world hasn't seen yet.
Well, we might all see it on Sunday, and they might be making some calls.
If they don't sign him, it could be because they don't think Love's going to miss that much time.
It's a good point.
Yeah.
Jaleel McLaughlin, Ty Chandler, Jordan Mason.
He also has said he's not going to play unless he's playing for a playoff team, starting for a playoff team.
All right, so Mason's obviously the prize here. These are the shallow league running backs. McLaughlin, Chandler, Mason. Would you drop McLaughlin or Chandler for Charbonnet, or Bigsby or Irving?
I would probably do that this week if I needed someone, but we're talking about most likely 10-team leagues are very shallow, 12-team leagues where these guys are all available. So, Walker's ruled out clearly. That's no brainer.
All right, well, but let's say McLaughlin, Bigsby is the most available. He's 23% rostered.
Mhm.
Would you rather have McLaughlin, Chandler, or Bigsby?
I would rather have McLaughlin and Chandler than Bigsby.
Same.
Okay. Justice Hill, 20%. So not a ton. I didn't hear a ton of enthusiasm for Justice Hill.
I don't mind picking up Justice Hill at all. Enthusiasm, I mean, there's just other guys that are in somewhat better situations with clearer paths to starting jobs right now. But I think just in the case of Justice Hill, in PPR, if he's going to be, let's say, a 4-catch guy on a week-to-week basis, like that's not a bad flex.
Agreed. I can't look at him the same way though in half and non-PPR. The targets are what will help him carry fantasy value from week to week.
Okay, so we got Charbonnet, we got the Dolphins running backs, and you guys are going to prefer Jalen Wright if the two starters are out. But Wright's 61% rostered. Wilson is 1% rostered, so people may not have an option there. Tank Bigsby, Bucky Irving, Justice Hill, Alexander Madison, Samaje Perine, and Emmanuel Wilson were not mentioned. Is Samaje Perine or Carson Strong the guy to own?
Carson Steele?
Well, Steele is strong. Carson Steele.
I think it depends on what you need. If you need somebody who's going to play more right away, I think we're going to see Perine's role grow. He'll end up, I think, taking a bigger share of those third down opportunities. Steele is probably the more likely runner if there's something happens to Pacheco. So if you want to go that route from a stash candidate, sure.
There will be a time this year where we'll tell everybody, all right, you need to start carrying the actual backups for your stud running backs. And that time is going to be like week 13, something like that, when you're heading toward the playoffs. That's when those guys would be a little bit more sensible to put on a bench. I wouldn't put them on your bench now.
Are you ready to drop Blake Corum? He is 90% rostered.
If I need to make a move, yes.
Yep.
Okay. I just got an email, by the way, asking me why someone said, why can't I put Puka Nacua on IR? He's going to go on IR.
He's not on IR.
A player has to be officially put on IR. Things could change. So yeah, you have to be patient. This is not like CBS using judgment. This is just when a team puts that guy on IR, that's when it happens. Wide receivers in shallow leagues: Brian Thomas, Khalil Shakir, Jamison Williams, Marquise Brown, Josh Palmer, and I think Jamison Williams is number 1 on this list, right? I think
yes, without doubt.
Jamison Thomas, Shakir, Marquise Brown, Josh Palmer, Marquise Brown, whatever the other was, and then Jerry Jeudy. Jeudy could see a bump. Obviously, he had 8 targets in week 1, but he could see a bump with Njoku out. Brandon Cooks, he had 7 targets at Cleveland. He had 1 touchdown. Do you think he's going to be reliable this season, or just if Njoku's out, or just if Ferguson's out?
I think both. I mean, look, he had some good performances at times last year, but this is an offense right now that can't run the ball, that is potentially down Jake Ferguson, that Dak is going to have to do a lot of heavy lifting. And I think the defense, while it looked very good against the Browns, I don't think is going to be as stout as it was a year ago. So not going to be terrible by any stretch, but not going to be as formidable, especially when they face a more competent offense. I don't know if that's this week. So Cooks to me is the number 1 receiver to add. I don't want to say it's not close, because Shaheed was great, and I think we'll get better with more targets, more opportunities. Carl threw 23 passes. I think the Rams guys are certainly interesting, but if you tell me that Ferguson's going to miss this week or potentially more weeks, Cooks to me is the easy number 1 add.
All right, Tyler Lockett is on this list, 63% rostered.
He doesn't go away. He just doesn't go away. Like, give him credit, man. Injured all throughout the week, comes out, and he's the best Seahawks receiver. Yes, there are some circumstances here. They played a good secondary where DK Metcalf was taken away, so that will change some things. And I did drop him down a little bit based on the list I gave you. But why wouldn't you add him? Like, it's just an easy Puka replacement if he's out there, because you know what you're getting.
I'd rather add DeMarcus Robinson.
I don't blame you, and I dropped him behind DeMarcus Robinson. But there's still look. Dave said it himself. Tyler Johnson is somebody that he's considering over DeMarcus Robinson. There's no guarantee that one of these guys is a lock but Lockett
Lockett. Yeah.
is kind of locked into Seattle.
I have a nickname. I have the Lockroach.
Yeah, last time you gave a nickname, it didn't go so well, so you might want to rethink this.
What was
Lockroach is clever. Very good.
Lockroach? Yeah, that never goes away.
Yeah, I wonder where you got that from.
What? I stole that?
Yeah, I used
Yeah.
to say it about the Broncos guy all the time.
Who?
The running back. What was his name that never went away?
You called him a
Said it for years.
cockroach?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think we should move on. I think we should move on.
All right. This is the
Yeah,
completely
you
different.
giving nicknames is bad.
I don't know what you're talking about. What nickname was bad?
Um,
Oh, that was bad. Yeah, that was bad. All right, Demarcus Robinson, Tyler Johnson, Tyler Lockett, Adonai Mitchell, and Alec Pierce. Or I'll throw Josh Downs in there. Does anybody want a Colts receiver?
Well, if you
For
want a
team- yeah,
Colts receiver,
absolutely.
Mitchell's the one that is the most fun. He's playing right now, very close to catching a couple of deep balls from Richardson, and this was a talented receiver that landed in a bad spot, but he might be able to actually make an impact. Like I think I love Alec Pierce. I think I like him better than like what he is now in the league. But I think if you're picking him up just based on what he did in week 1, you're going to regret it. I'd rather have Mitchell.
Greg Dortch, Wandale Robinson, Xavier Leggett, Jalen McMillan, Josh Reynolds, Devon Vele, Jalen Naylor. Again, those names are Dortch, Wandale, Leggett, McMillan, Reynolds, Josh Reynolds, Devon Vele, Jalen Naylor. Jamie, are any of these guys anything more than just deep league targets?
No, they're all deep league targets. But again, we have to service a very wide range of audience. Robinson, 12 targets, led the team. You know what you're getting there, better in PPR than anything else. Dortch is a very similar type of player. I believe he led the team in targets, 9 targets for him, or right there with Trey McBride. So the Reynolds and Vele situations, they threw the ball a lot. 12 targets for Sutton. I believe it was 9 targets for Reynolds, 8 targets for Vele. So again, similar type of situations where volume will matter, but I don't know how much talent will play out here with these guys. How are we saying his name? Leggett?
I think it's
Leggett.
Leggett. They gave a
Leggett.
pronunciation guy. Leggett?
Okay, so Leggett. That offense stinks. They need to get him some manufactured touches, however way possible, because he could be a difference maker. Clearly, they're going to be better than what they showed against New Orleans. By how much, we'll find out. But he's somebody that's, I think, a little bit ahead of the group if you're just looking for somebody that could become something. But these PPR options, the 2 Broncos guys, Dortch, Robinson, they're not bad players in some interesting situations that, while you don't want to start them, they could be productive.
Someone's saying, what about Alan Lazard? And I would say, what about Mike Williams? If you had to pick a Jets receiver, who would it be?
So long-term, it would be Williams. Short-term, it would be Lazard. Williams is going to continue to work his way back from the ACL tear. We know how much Lazard means to Aaron Rodgers. But again, think about the 2 touchdowns. One was on a broken play where, how much did the back end of the 49ers secondary just let him get behind them? And, you saw the 2 guys chasing him because of the penalty thrown. Like Dave said, Rodgers is a master at that.
Right.
How often you catch
It was the free play, not a broken play.
Yep, the free play, excuse me. Yep. And then the second touchdown was from Tyrod Taylor in garbage time. So there's not a lot of sustainable value there for me.
All right. Tight ends, Isaiah Likely, Taysom Hill, and Juwan Johnson. In PPR, who would you prefer, Taysom Hill or Juwan Johnson?
Still Taysom.
Yep.
All right, then it's Taysom in every format. Colby Parkinson's going to get an opportunity here at Arizona, San Francisco, at Chicago, Green Bay, and then a bye. Parkinson had 5 targets, and he played a lot of snaps in the second half. He played a lot of snaps, Colby Parkinson, for the Rams. Luke Schoonmaker could replace Jake Ferguson. Jordan Akins had all 3 of his catches for 27 yards after David Njoku's injury for the Browns. They're at Jacksonville this week. And Zach Ertz had 4 targets, 3 catches for 28 yards. He faces the Giants this week. I mentioned Gesicki. We kind of poured cold water on that. Any interest in Gerald Everett or Cole Kmet with Odunze likely to miss time?
Not yet. It would be Kmet, though, but not yet.
Anybody want to talk about Parkinson or Ertz? Or
Parkinson is similar to the Rams receivers. Like, we don't know how they're going to, diversify their target share.
Right.
And, I think I saw some stat last night, like anytime how many catches did Kupp have?
11, I think?
14.
Oh, 14?
14 on 21 targets.
So with something like anytime he's over 10 catches, their record's awful. So clearly they don't
Yeah.
want to be in that type of situation. Clearly
Really?
throwing the ball at much. But somebody's gonna have to make plays besides Cup, and Parkinson at this position is worth a look.
These are all, like in the case of Tyler Johnson and Parkinson, they're both short area target type of receivers. They're all going to be mostly second read guys because I just assume Cooper Kupp's going to be the first read on every play. Maybe he gets 4 catches.
All right, and DSTs, Chargers, Colts, Seahawks, Titans. Chargers, 39% roster. They're at Carolina. Colts at Green Bay. Seahawks at New England. Titans against the Jets. Kickers, Cameron Dicker, Chris Boswell, Blake Groupie, Jake Bates. And that is it for Fantasy Football today. We have CBS Sports Network at 1 p.m. Eastern. If you want to join us for that, that'd be awesome. We'll see you then. Have a good one, everybody.